The artificial atmosphere tasted wrong in Alara's mouth, too rich in nitrogen, too moist, too alive. Her silvery eyes, hidden behind perception-altering lenses that made them appear hazel, scanned the crowded emergency room. 3 weeks on this planet, and humans still overwhelmed her senses. The Anthony Council had been clear about her mission: evaluate the human capacity for empathy. Previous observers had reported humans as dangerously unpredictable, their minds filled with violence and selfishness thinly veiled behind social constructs. Perfect justification for the quarantine protocols the Council was eager to implement. Alara adjusted her human appearance, the slightly too perfect features that never quite looked right in Earth's harsher light, and focused on the task at hand. As a Level 9 resonator, she could perceive thoughts without physical contact, though deep emotions required proximity. So far, her findings matched previous reports: surface thoughts dominated by personal concerns, flickering attention spans, periodic bursts of empathy quickly smothered by self-interest. Until she encountered him. Clear the way, multiple GSWs coming through. The emergency doors burst open as paramedics wheeled in a young man drenched in blood. The doctor who responded moved with practiced efficiency. Trauma Bay 1, tell radiology we need them stat. Dr. Marcus Kavanaugh, 42 Earth years, brilliant physician according to hospital records, and completely, unnervingly silent to her perception. Where other minds broadcasted their thoughts like chaotic radio signals, his remained contained, disciplined. Not blank, Alara could sense activity, like hearing muffled voices through thick walls, but impenetrable in a way she'd never encountered. She moved closer, increasing her receptive field while maintaining her disguise as a hospital volunteer. BP dropping to 80-40, a nurse called out. He's going into shock. Push another unit and prep for thoracotomy, Marcus ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos. As his hands moved with surgical precision, Alara caught fragments, not thoughts but emotional impressions. A calmness that wasn't natural. Pain held at bay, something deeply buried. We're losing him, someone shouted. Marcus's eyes, a startling blue against his tan skin, narrowed. No, we're not. For 3 hours, Alara watched him work, struggling to understand why her abilities failed with him. When the patient stabilized against all odds, she expected triumph or at least relief from the doctor. Instead, as the team dispersed, she detected only a brief flicker of emotion before his mental walls slammed back into place. That night, Alara sent her report to the Anthony Council, carefully omitting her failure to read one particular human. This anomaly required investigation before reporting. The following morning found her in the hospital cafeteria, nursing a bitter drink humans inexplicably enjoyed called coffee. Her species required no stimulants, but the ritual provided excellent cover for observation. Mind if I join you? Every other seat's taken. Alara looked up to find Marcus standing before her, exhaustion etched into the lines around his eyes. This close, without the distraction of emergency, she could study him properly. The slight unevenness to his beard where a thin scar disrupted the growth, the tension held in his shoulders even at rest. Please, she gestured, curious and cautious. You're new here, he stated, not a question. Foreign exchange program. Her cover story. Yes, medical administration observation. Interesting accent, can't quite place it. Northern Europe, she replied with practiced vagueness. Your surgery yesterday was impressive. Something shifted behind his eyes. Just doing my job. When their gazes met, Alara felt a peculiar sensation, like standing at the edge of a vast chasm. Whatever this human carried inside him, it was nothing like what she'd been told to expect. And despite all her training, despite the mission parameters, she needed to understand why. The hospital corridors had become familiar territory for Alara over the following weeks. She had crafted her role meticulously. Alara Nordstrom, visiting healthcare administrator from Helsinki, studying American emergency response systems. The identity allowed her access and excused any cultural missteps her alien nature might betray. Your efficiency reports are quite thorough, Dr. Holloway, the actual hospital administrator, commented while reviewing her fabricated documents. Though I'm curious why you focused so extensively on Dr. Kavanaugh's department. Alara maintained her practiced smile. His trauma response metrics are exceptional, My supervisors are particularly interested in replicating such outcomes. What she couldn't explain was her growing obsession with the enigma of Marcus's mind. Among the cacophony of thoughts she routinely filtered, nurses calculating medication doses, patients worrying about bills, doctors second-guessing diagnoses. His mental silence was both disorienting and compelling. She found him in the doctor's lounge that afternoon, slumped in a chair, eyes closed but not sleeping. "Long shift?" she asked, settling into the chair opposite him. Marcus opened his eyes slowly. 48 hours, multiple-car pileup on the interstate. "You should rest." "Probably." He studied her with that unnerving intensity she'd come to expect. "Instead, I was thinking you might join me for dinner. There's a place around the corner that serves decent food even at odd hours." Alara hesitated. While closer proximity offered better chances to penetrate his mental shields, it also increased the risk of exposing her true nature. "I'd like that," she heard herself say. The restaurant was small and dimly lit, with Edison bulbs casting warm pools of light over worn wooden tables. Marcus ordered for both of them when she seemed overwhelmed by the menu, a skill that reminded her how many normal human experiences remained foreign to her. "So Helsinki," he began, leaning back as their drinks arrived. "Beautiful city. I spent some time there during a medical conference 3 years ago." A potential trap in her cover story. Alara sipped her wine, buying time. The city changes quickly, development everywhere. "True of most places," he agreed, his eyes never leaving her face. "Though some things remain constant, like human nature." Something in his tone made her pause. "And what aspects of human nature interest you, Doctor?" "Survival," he answered without hesitation. "How far people go to survive, what they'll sacrifice." He rotated his glass slowly. "What they'll become." Alara felt a peculiar tension, not from reading his thoughts, but from the weight behind his words. "You've seen much of that, in your work." "In my work," he echoed, the words holding something unspoken. Their food arrived, momentarily breaking the intensity between them. As Marcus reached for the salt, his hand brushed hers accidentally. The contact lasted less than a second, but it was enough. His barriers, so impenetrable from a distance, fractured momentarily at her touch. Emotions flooded through, not organized thoughts but raw, visceral feelings. Sand-filled air burning lungs, blood seeping through fingers despite desperate pressure. A child's blank eyes, crushing guilt, bone-deep exhaustion, and beneath it all, a resolve so fierce it felt like its own element. Alara gasped audibly, dropping her fork. "Are you all right?" Concern filled his voice. She struggled to regain composure, overwhelmed by the intensity of what she'd glimpsed. "Yes, just startled myself." His expression shifted subtly. "You seem surprised." "By what?" "Whatever you just saw." Fear shot through her. Had he detected her intrusion? Impossible. Humans had no awareness of anthony mental capabilities. "I don't know what you mean," she managed, voice steadier than she felt. Marcus studied her for a long moment before his expression softened. "My mistake." They finished their meal with careful conversation about hospital policies and procedures, but something fundamental had shifted. The brief mental contact had left Alara shaken, not just by what she'd seen, but by her reaction to it. The Council's reports described humans as emotionally primitive, capable of only basic empathic responses. What she'd felt in Marcus defied those assessments completely. Back in her temporary apartment, Alara should have been drafting her weekly report. Instead, she stood by the window, looking out at the city lights while replaying that moment of contact. The Anthony prided themselves on emotional detachment. To feel too deeply was considered a developmental flaw. Yet Marcus carried oceans of feeling beneath his controlled exterior, feelings that hadn't destroyed him, but somehow forged him into something stronger. Her communication device blinked, reminding her of her obligation to the Council. Her fingers hovered over it briefly before she made her decision. Her report would be delayed. She needed more information before she could properly assess this human, and perhaps, by extension, all humans. What she didn't acknowledge, even to herself, was a growing fear. Not of Marcus Kavanaugh, but of what his existence might mean for everything she'd been taught to believe. The emergency alert blared through the hospital at 2:17 a.m. Alara had been monitoring the night shift, ostensibly gathering data on staffing efficiencies but actually waiting for Marcus to return from his brief rest period. The message over the intercom was terse. Code Black, all available personnel to ER. Alara knew what Code Black meant, mass casualty event. She moved quickly to the emergency department where chaos was already unfolding. Chemical explosion at the manufacturing plant on Henderson, a nurse explained as she rushed past. Multiple critical patients incoming. Within minutes, ambulances began arriving. The emergency room transformed into a battlefield triage center, patients on every available surface, medical staff moving with controlled urgency, the air thick with the scent of chemical burns and fear. Marcus appeared as if materialized from the chaos itself, his face set in lines of determination. "Status," he demanded of the charge nurse. 27 incoming, 15 critical. Burns, inhalation injuries, traumatic amputations. Or teams are prepping, but we're going to be handling the worst here. He nodded once, then began issuing directives with military precision. Alara stayed at the periphery, watching as he moved from patient to patient, making split-second decisions that would determine who lived and who died. When the third wave of ambulances arrived, they brought a patient whose condition made even the seasoned nurses pause. A man whose body had absorbed the brunt of the explosion, his torso a mass of embedded debris and charred tissue. "He's gone," one of the residents said, already turning toward patients with better chances. "No," Marcus countered, moving to the man's side. "Get me an intubation tray and push epi. Richardson, start a central line." "Doctor, he's still alive," Marcus cut him off, "and he stays that way until I say otherwise." What happened next unfolded in a blur of technical precision and sheer willpower. For 90 minutes, Marcus worked on the patient while directing care for others, never slowing, never hesitating. The rest of the staff fell into rhythm with him, their initial doubts replaced by determined focus. Alara moved closer, compelled by something she couldn't name. When she handed Marcus a fresh pair of gloves, their fingers brushing momentarily, his mental barriers, already strained by exhaustion and intensity, collapsed completely. The connection hit her with physical force. She was no longer standing in the ER but kneeling in scorching desert sand, holding pressure on a soldier's severed artery while explosions shook the ground. She was running through a village as mortar fire rained down, a child clutched to her chest. She was standing in a quiet hospital room, watching an EKG flatline despite hours of desperate intervention. Memory after memory crashed through her consciousness, not just images but complete sensory experiences. The metallic taste of fear, the weight of responsibility, the cold emptiness of loss, and through it all Marcus's voice, sometimes screaming, sometimes whispering, "Not this one, not on my watch." She felt the woman he had loved and lost to a drunk driver while he was deployed, the crushing guilt of not being there. She experienced the brother who died of an overdose while Marcus was saving strangers halfway around the world. She knew the names of every patient he couldn't save, each one carved into his memory with painful precision. And beneath it all, like bedrock, the reason he kept going. Because he could help, because someone had to carry this burden, because every life saved somehow balanced the cosmic ledger against those lost. When Alara came back to herself, she was leaning against a wall, tears streaming down her face. Across the room, Marcus looked up from his now stabilized patient, his eyes finding hers with startling clarity. Somehow he knew what had happened. The remainder of the crisis passed in a haze for Alara. She assisted where needed, moving automatically while her mind struggled to process what she had experienced. The Anthri Council had taught that humans were emotionally simplistic, their empathy limited to tribal connections and self-interest. But what she had witnessed in Marcus's mind defied every teaching. Hours later, when the last patient had been stabilized or transferred, she found herself on the hospital roof, gulping the pre-dawn air that still carried traces of smoke from the distant factory. "You're not from Helsinki," Marcus's voice came from behind her. "Or Earth, for that matter." Alara didn't turn. "How did you know?" "When you saw inside me, it wasn't one way." He moved to stand beside her at the railing. "I felt something alien, something vast." His voice held no fear, only exhaustion and a strange wonder. "What are you?" "A mistake," she whispered, unable to look at him. "I came to study humans, to evaluate your capacity for empathy. My people believe you are dangerous, emotionally primitive, selfish, prone to violence. They're not entirely wrong, Marcus said, gazing out at the city. But they're not right. Finally, she turned to him. What I felt in you, it wasn't primitive, it was oceanic, complex beyond anything my people believe possible. Her voice broke. How do you bear it, all that pain, all that loss? Marcus was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice held the same steadiness it had during the crisis. Because feeling everything is the price of being truly alive. He looked at her then, his eyes reflecting the first hint of dawn. And I think you know that now too. Ilara realized with sudden clarity that the wetness on her face wasn't just from earlier. She was crying again, experiencing grief and awe and something like hope, all at once. Emotions no proper anthony should indulge, let alone value. I can never report this, she whispered. They wouldn't understand. What will you do? She looked out at the awakening city, seeing it through new eyes, not as an alien observer, but as someone irrevocably changed by what she had witnessed. I don't know, she admitted, but I can't unknow what I've learned about humans, about myself. As the sun broke over the horizon, casting golden light across the smoke-tinged sky, Ilara understood that her mission had ended, and something entirely different had begun. 3 days passed before Ilara saw Marcus again. She had retreated to her apartment, ostensibly to compile her reports, but actually to grapple with the profound disorientation that followed their connection. The anthony emphasized mental discipline above all else. To be so completely overwhelmed by another's emotions was considered not just unprofessional, but developmentally regressive. Yet she couldn't deny what had happened, nor could she deny how it had changed her. Her communication device remained silent, no messages sent or received. The council would be expecting her weekly update, but what could she possibly tell them? That their fundamental understanding of human emotional capacity was flawed. That she, a seasoned resonator, had been reduced to tears by the depth of feeling in a single human mind. When the knock came at her door, she already knew who it was. Marcus stood in the hallway, no longer in scrubs but in jeans and a faded gray Henley that made him look surprisingly ordinary. He carried a small paper bag. May I come in? Ilara stepped aside, suddenly self-conscious about her apartment, the conspicuous lack of personal items, the precise arrangements that no human would naturally create. I brought food, he said, placing the bag on her kitchen counter. Though I realize now I don't actually know if you eat. We do, she replied. Though our nutritional requirements differ, your food is tolerable. A small smile touched his lips. High praise. An awkward silence settled between them. Two beings from different worlds who had shared an intimacy neither had expected or fully understood. The patient survived, Marcus finally said. The one from the explosion, they're calling it a miracle. It wasn't a miracle, Ilara responded. It was you. He shook his head. It was the team, always is. He looked around her sparse living space. You travel light. My presence here was meant to be temporary, she hesitated. It still is. Marcus nodded as if he'd expected this answer. When you were inside my mind, what exactly did you see? Ilara moved to the window, gathering her thoughts. Everything, your time as a combat medic, the lives saved and lost, your fiancé, Isabel, your brother, Thomas. She turned back to him. Your guilt, your determination, your refusal to surrender to despair despite having every reason to do so. He flinched slightly at the names but didn't look away. And that made you cry. On my world, to feel so deeply is considered a weakness, she explained. We're taught that intense emotion clouds judgment, hinders progress. We see humanity's emotional nature as primitive, dangerous, evidence of your unfitness for galactic community. But you don't believe that anymore. I don't know what I believe, she admitted, except that what I experienced in your mind wasn't primitive. It was. She searched for words adequate to the experience. Transformative, the way you've channeled pain into purpose, how you carry loss without being destroyed by it. My people have no framework for understanding this. Marcus was quiet for a moment, processing her words. Then he asked, what about you? Did I see anything real about you when we connected? The question startled her. What did you perceive? Loneliness, he said simply. A kind of isolation I recognized, different cause, same effect. His eyes held hers. You're an outsider among your own people, aren't you? The observation struck with painful accuracy. Alara had always been considered unusually sensitive for an anthary, too easily affected by the emotions she was merely supposed to catalog and analyze. Yes, she acknowledged softly, my capacity for resonance is stronger than most. It's why I was selected for this mission, but also why I'm kept at a distance. I feel too much. Marcus moved closer, not touching her but near enough that she could sense the warmth radiating from his body. Then we're both anomalies. Different species, similar conditions, she offered with a small smile. Tell me about your world, he said, settling onto her couch. Not the official version, the truth. And so she did. For hours they talked, about the crystalline spires of Anthary cities, the communal consciousness that linked her people, the beauty and limitations of a society that prized harmony above individual expression. She described the 3 moons that lit the night skies, the vibrant auroras that danced across the polar regions, the ancient ritual songs that even the most rational Anthary still performed. In turn, Marcus shared parts of himself voluntarily that she had only glimpsed during their inadvertent connection. His childhood in a small coastal town, his decision to join the military to pay for medical school, the unexpected calling he'd found in conflict zones. After Isabel died, he told her, I thought about ending it, had it all planned out. What stopped you? An emergency call, car accident on the highway near my apartment. I was the first responder. His eyes grew distant with the memory. Young mother, 2 kids, nothing dramatic, they all survived with minor injuries. But I realized that if I'd already been gone, those few minutes waiting for another medic might have made the difference. So you keep going for others, not yourself. At first, eventually you discover that helping others is actually how you help yourself. He looked at her with unexpected warmth. I think you understand that better than most of your kind. Something shifted between them in that moment, a recognition of kindred spirits despite the vast differences of their origins. When his hand eventually found hers, there was no shock of mental connection, just the simple comfort of touch. What will you tell your people? He asked as evening settled around them. Alara considered the question that had haunted her for days. I don't know. The truth would be dismissed as contamination, emotional contagion from prolonged exposure to humans, she sighed. But I can't report what they expect to hear, not anymore. Whatever you decide, Marcus said quietly. You've already changed things just by seeing us differently, by seeing me. As night fell over the city, they sat together in comfortable silence, an alien woman and a human man, both outliers among their kind, both forever altered by the walls that had fallen between them. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Alara felt not like an observer but a participant in something profound. Something that defied categories and classifications. Something that might, against all odds, open doors between worlds. The message from the Anthary Council arrived at precisely 3:17 a.m. Earth time. Its tone was clinical, its implications devastating. Resonator Alara, your observation period is complete. The preliminary data you provided confirms our assessment of human emotional volatility. Extraction will commence in 2 planetary rotations. Final report required upon return. The quarantine protocol has been approved. Alara stared at the glowing text, understanding all too well what it meant. Quarantine protocol wasn't mere isolation. It was the systematic restriction of a species deemed too dangerous for cosmic community. Force fields would be established in Earth's upper atmosphere, undetectable to human technology but impenetrable from within. Humanity would be contained, studied from afar, never knowing the vastness they were being denied. All based on a conclusion she now knew to be profoundly wrong. Dawn found her walking along the riverfront, the city slowly awakening around her. 2 days, 48 Earth hours to make a decision that would affect billions of lives and change hers forever. Her communicator vibrated with an incoming call from the hospital. There's been an accident, Marcus said without preamble. School bus rollover. They're bringing in multiple pediatric traumas. I thought, maybe you'd want to be here. He didn't need to explain why. In the week since their connection, Alara had assisted during several emergencies, not as an observer but as a participant. Her Anthary abilities, heightened perception, perfect recall, subtle empathic guidance, had proven unexpectedly valuable in crisis situations. I'm on my way, she replied, already changing direction. The emergency department was controlled chaos when she arrived. Marcus stood at the center, triaging the incoming patients with calm efficiency. "Ilara," he acknowledged with a nod. "Bed 3 needs pain management while ortho is en route. The girl is terrified but trying to be brave." She moved to the indicated bed, where a child of perhaps 9 Earth years sat clutching her clearly fractured arm. Tears streaked her dirt-smudged face, but she wasn't making a sound. "Hello," Ilara said gently, kneeling to eye level. "I'm Ilara. I'm going to help with your pain while the bone doctor comes." The girl nodded wordlessly, her eyes wide with shock and fear. Ilara placed her hand lightly on the child's uninjured arm, using her anthery abilities to subtly modulate the pain receptors, not eliminating the sensation completely, which would be dangerous, but making it bearable. "Your name is?" she asked. "Mia," the girl whispered. "Mia, you're being very courageous. Can you tell me about what happened? It helps to talk." As the child haltingly described the bus sliding on wet pavement, the screams of her classmates, the terrible noise of metal crushing, Ilara maintained gentle contact. She wasn't just managing Mia's pain. She was absorbing some of the fear and trauma, dispersing it through her own consciousness in a technique forbidden by anthery protocol except between consenting adults. By the time the orthopedic surgeon arrived, Mia was breathing normally, her vital signs stabilized, her mind protected from the worst psychological impact of the accident. Throughout the day, Ilara moved from patient to patient, working alongside Marcus in a silent choreography that required no words. When the last child had been stabilized and either admitted or released to relieved parents, she found him in the doctor's lounge, head in his hands. "You knew I was leaving," she said quietly. "That's why you called me today." He looked up, exhaustion etched in every line of his face. "I felt it during our last emergency shift together, a decision approaching." His eyes met hers. "I thought you should see this before you go, what humans are capable of when we're at our best." "They're coming for me tomorrow," she admitted, sinking into the chair beside him. "And not just for me. The Council has approved quarantine measures for Earth." "Meaning?" "Your species will be isolated, prevented from reaching beyond your solar system when you eventually develop the capability, studied but never contacted." She looked at him with anguish. "All because they believe humans are too emotionally volatile, too unpredictable to join the greater community." Marcus absorbed this with remarkable calm. "And you, what do you believe now?" "That they're wrong, that what they interpret as weakness is actually your greatest strength." She leaned forward, suddenly intense. "I've seen what you do with your pain, Marcus. You transform it. You use it to connect, to heal, to persist despite overwhelming odds. My people have eliminated suffering at the cost of limiting joy. We've sacrificed depth for stability." "What will you do?" The question hung between them, the same one he had asked on the hospital roof days ago. But now she had an answer. "I'm going to show them." The extraction point was a clearing in a state park, remote enough to avoid human witnesses. Ilara stood alone beneath the star-filled sky, her communicator set to transmit on all council frequencies. She felt rather than heard Marcus approach from the tree line. "You shouldn't be here," she said without turning. "It could be dangerous." "I've faced worse odds." He moved to stand beside her, their shoulders almost touching. Above them, the air began to shimmer with the distinctive distortion of an approaching anthery vessel. "Last chance to change your mind," he said quietly. Ilara shook her head. "My mind was changed the moment I truly saw yours." The ship appeared, silvery and silent, hovering 20 meters above the ground. A column of light extended downward, scanning for her biosignature. "Council members," she spoke clearly into her communicator, knowing her words were being transmitted to the ship and beyond, to her homeworld light years away. "I reject the quarantine protocol and all findings that support it. Your assessment of humanity is fundamentally flawed." The light wavered, focusing more intently on her position. "As proof, I offer direct neural testimony." She reached for Marcus's hand, her fingers intertwining with his. "I have established deep resonance with a human subject. I have experienced the full spectrum of their emotional capacity. It is not primitive. It is not dangerous." The light pulsed, an unspoken command to enter the extraction field. "I will not return," she continued, her voice strengthening. "Instead, I propose a new protocol, direct engagement, cultural exchange, true understanding." From the ship came a beam of concentrated energy, Not a weapon, but a forced extraction ray designed to separate her from any physical contact and draw her aboard. In the split second before it reached them, Alara turned to Marcus, placed her hands on either side of his face, and initiated the most forbidden of all anthony mental techniques, complete consciousness sharing. The energy beam struck and scattered, unable to penetrate the unified mental field they had created. In that moment, they were neither fully human nor fully anthony, but something unprecedented, a bridge between species, a living proof of compatibility. Images flowed between them. Alara's childhood beneath crystal spires, Marcus's first day of medical school, her initial mission briefing, his battlefield promotions, their shared experiences in the emergency room. Joy and sorrow, triumph and failure, hope and despair, all exchanged in perfect understanding. Above them, the ship's energy patterns fluctuated with confusion. This was outside all protocols, beyond all contingency plans. "We are not enemies," Alara projected, knowing her amplified thoughts would reach the ship's crew. "We are not threats to each other. We are complementary species with much to learn, much to share." For long moments, nothing happened. Then, gradually, the extraction beam withdrew. The ship remained hovering, its sensors clearly recording everything. When Alara finally stepped back from Marcus, breaking their mental connection, tears streamed down both their faces. His from the overwhelming experience of sharing an alien consciousness, hers from the profound certainty that had replaced all doubt. "Did it work?" he asked hoarsely. "I don't know," she admitted, "but they're still here, they're still listening." Above them, the ship's lights flickered in a pattern she recognized, the Council's signal for data processing and reconsideration. Not agreement, but not rejection either. "What happens now?" Marcus asked, his eyes never leaving hers despite the otherworldly scene above them. Alara looked up at the ship, then back to the human who had changed everything she thought she knew. "Something new," she said, "something neither of our peoples has imagined yet." As dawn broke over the horizon, the anthony ship remained, neither retreating nor advancing. Its very presence a tacit acknowledgement that the universe they all thought they understood had just expanded beyond measure. Alara reached for Marcus's hand once more, feeling the resonance between them. No longer overwhelming but comfortably familiar, a connection that defied light years of evolution and prejudice. "Whatever comes next," she said softly, "we've already proven the impossible." And in that moment, as human and anthony stood together beneath Earth's brightening sky, two isolated beings who had found understanding across the vast gulf of stars, transformation wasn't just a possibility, it was already underway.